So, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Research-wise,
Yes.
so I am a mathematician by training.
Mhm.
So I'm a biologist. I'm a working biologist. I
Mhm.
should start saying that. The questions that I ask, the things that I'm interested in, are biological questions. They're
Mhm.
questions that have to do with, you know, how we got here, how the world and nature came, or rather, living matter in the world came to look and be the way it is, the reasons for that, and also think about how it could change in the future. So I'm interested in the diversity of phenotypes. I want to understand why animals look the way they do, specifically why vertebrates look the way they do, why we have the number of vertebrae that we do, and when that changes, for example in a snake, which are very long, versus a frog, how that happens and what it means. So those are the questions, high level questions that I'm interested in. And I guess what's maybe, I don't know, unusual or that I find cool is the way in which we go about it in my group, which is that because I'm a mathematician by training, we do a lot of quantitative experimentation and a lot of quantitative microscopy, a lot of mathematical modeling to try to understand the mechanisms that lead to that diversity. And in particular, we look at embryos. The reason we look at embryos is because that's where, in my opinion, the magic happens. The embryo is generating the adult. So if you understand, if you want to understand why a fish has 30 vertebrates versus another species of fish that have 38, you have to look at how the embryos of both species have generated that diversity or that difference.
Okay, thank you. Can you tell us why it is vertebrates specifically that you find most interesting?
It isn't actually. So vertebrates at the moment I find are convenient, and in particular it's because we work with these species of fish, which are Lake Malawi cichlid fishes. These are a very rapid adaptive radiation of fish, and what's amazing about them is that you have a lot of diversity. So 850 species have evolved in less than 1 million years. That's in evolutionary timescales is nothing. With very little genetic divergence. So they are very convenient. But for example, number of segments is an important trait for arthropods as well, and also for annelid worms. But also there are many other traits that evolution has tinkered with to give us diversity. So I'm not most interested in vertebrates. They are very convenient. They work well for us at the moment.
Okay, makes sense. Why would it be so? I've always wondered, like, with defining things are alive, you know, the constant debate whether viruses are alive or not. Why do we do it? Like, why can't we rest at saying it's a semantic thing? Like, there are certain characteristics that we put under the category of alive and go on with that. Like, why is this question so pressing, defining what is alive? What would the consequences be of doing it wrong?
So I think that there's two things. So first, it's how successful physicists and mathematicians and chemists have been at defining things. That's enviable. We want to be able to do that in the other sciences. I don't know about in the humanities, but definitely in the other sciences. And because it's been done so well, for example in physics, then it seems as though it should be doable. I don't think it's doable all the time. I don't think it's doable in messier subjects such as biology. However, it is very important to have good definitions because that shapes your thoughts and it shapes the questions that you ask, and it definitely shapes how you go about addressing them. So we have this impossible task where our definitions are important, but the concepts that we want to define in biology often evade good definitions. But nonetheless, we can't just say, oh, it's just words. Because actually, everything we do at the end of the day is about words and about concepts and about understanding that.
Yeah.
So I'm always, and I think my colleagues are also always battling with definitions. And in biology, that's huge. Like, what's a cell type? What's a stem cell? What's a species? No good answer for any of those, but nonetheless super important to have those concepts be clear.
Do you think we might be often conflating responsiveness to life? Because I can imagine that in the future, as as AI becomes even better and better, like it would be easy to imagine a scenario where a human confuses an AI bot to be alive, and then would we have to rethink our definitions of what alive even means?
Yes.
Mm.
Yes. I think yes. I think yeah. 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 Yes. I think that that's going to be very difficult,
Mm.
particularly so it's not difficult at all to program or to have entities in a computer simulation that reproduce,
Yeah.
right? So given that AI can do all the things that it can do, why wouldn't it be able to copy itself?
Yeah.
Of course it can copy itself, and then it can interact, and then it can find ways of maybe living on. If you think of like different computers, all of the computers connected to the web, you switch it off one place, it can spread. So thinking really just letting it go. So yeah.
Okay, makes sense. Um, let's go a different direction. Are there any massive, big, open questions right now which are very related to what you're doing?
Oof. I think we know very little about everything. Honestly, like
One would like not to believe that, but that's
I'm
seems to
pretty
be.
sure. I'm pretty sure we know very little about everything, and what we know is incredibly detailed, which is great, and it's been given by the technological advances of the last 50 years and stuff, and that's been super important. But I think that we've been very reductionist because we could. So now let's put an analogy, like we've sort of identified all the components, but we still don't know at all like how they work together, which of them are important, which of them are redundant, which of them are responsible for what. So yeah, I don't think we know anything about anything, frankly.
Are there any particular questions on your mind right now for the next few years of your own research?
So one thing that I'm very excited about is how this maternal environment contributes to the phenotype, because it's been shown before using different species of fish, for example goldfish and carp, that if you hybridize them, the number of vertebrae is always inherited from the mother's side, right? And it's different between those two species. So I think that but then from those experiments you couldn't disentangle what was genetic and what was from the sort of maternal environment. And by maternal environment, something that maybe people won't be that familiar with is that the embryo, the zygote, has its set of genes, but the mother injects mRNAs into the embryo at those early stages. So how does that injection of mRNAs actually shape later phenotypes and have maybe long-lasting effects on the phenotype? So that's something that I'm super excited. And I think it has important applications in human biology, right? When you think, for example, about surrogate mothers and what because how the surrogate mother actually might influence the phenotype of the baby that she's carrying, although the actual baby that she's carrying genetically isn't hers. I think that's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I can imagine that having massive impacts in like medicine and
IVF and reproductive health.
What do you usually think about the narrative that our bodies are prehistoric, but technology grows rapidly, which means that we're constantly lagging behind like what technology is giving us? Because this is a common narrative you'd find amongst people who'd like to describe like emergent technologies as one of the root causes of the rise of mental illnesses right now. Do you think that is there some truth to that narrative that like we are unable to cope with how quickly technology is growing?
I think there might be something to that. I hadn't thought of it before, but if you think about, for example, humans, I mean, we've been living pretty much in the same way for thousands of years before the Industrial Revolution. And what's happened from the Industrial Revolution till now, which was like 150 years ago, the changes are massive in the way in which we live, right? So I think it's quite think it's not implausible that in many ways we haven't had a chance to adapt to our new lifestyle. I think, yeah, I think that might be a way of putting that.
Do you think that we'd solve, like, would evolution take care of that problem on its own?
I don't know, because then going back on what I just said, for example, we do live longer, we are healthier, right? Like, I'm 40, like before the Industrial Revolution, I don't think I would have made it to 40, or I'd be super, super old. I'd be like an elder of my community, right? So maybe we aren't actually that maladapted. maybe making general comments like that is always going to be dangerous. And whereas some things, in some ways, our new lifestyle has allowed us to thrive. In other ways, maybe we are maladapted.
All right. How about other organisms on Earth? Do you think they're going to be able to, like, is evolution quick enough for them to fare against the changes that are happening in our planet?
So look, this is mysterious, and this is a very important question, and one of the questions that sort of we always think about, particularly when we think about these rapid adaptive radiations, right? Because these fish that we work on, as I said earlier, they've evolved 850 species in 1 million years or less. So, and with very little, very small genetic changes. So the difference between different species of Lake Malawi cichlids are the same or on the same scale as the differences in within populations of humans. And they are completely different species, right? So we don't understand that much about the drivers of evolutionary rates, right? We don't understand. And we're flabbergasted that these fish have evolved so quickly. And then you look at whatever, like a coelacanth, or people call them living fossils, and that's not the best way of thinking about them. But it's true that there are other species that, at least to your eye, have changed very little over millennia. So yeah, again, we don't know anything.
Are there any clues out there that sort of suggest why this might be the case, that this particular type of fish evolved so rapidly as compared to the others? Was it something about where it lived, or like, do we know nothing at all?
So yeah, we do know a bit. So for example, but we don't understand. We know things, but we don't understand very much. So for example, we do know that they evolved from one single common ancestor that colonized this lake. So one theory is, well, there were lots of open niches and available niches for this fish for that common ancestor to occupy, and then those drove different adaptive responses. Yeah, but there are other fish in the lake, and they haven't achieved this, right? So yeah.
Okay. And one final question: if you were to look at all the studies you've done throughout your academic career, is there anything that particularly stands out as something that you've learned from studying these species that taught you something about the way humans operate?
Oh, that's a hard one. So I don't study these species from a behavioral point of view, for example. I think that maybe the mathematical aspects of the work that I've done, where what I've done a lot of is try to come up with new ways of analyzing developmental processes in a way that incorporates and accommodates their full dynamic range. I think that maybe that is something that has changed my mindset a little bit, with this idea that we touched upon it before, but that you're never in stasis, everything is always dynamic, that you have an agency, that you can shape things, that things will also shape you, and that this is always in flow. And yeah, I think that would be the one.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much for taking out the time.
Thank you, my pleasure.